Hello, my friends, this is Paul, and today we're going to talk about how to make an ISTJ writhe with anger, because you probably thought that didn't happen, because a lot of times our types are extremely calm and collected. We're not really the type of people that will get enraged or furious. We're not the type that'll start screaming and hollering at people. There are exceptions to that rule. I mean, if you're a dad to certain people, you very well might think, well, I'm the man of the house, and therefore it is my God-given right to yell at my children. But that's a version of ISTJ, but that's not all of us as a whole. We're melancholy's first, choleric's second. So while we do like structure, at the same time, we're also going to want to be thoughtful about things. And if we don't have all the information, we're not going to want to make a case. So I just went on a huge tangent 20 minutes ago about how much I hated Lord of the Rings and how much I hated Last of Us Part 2. And the reason why is because both of them, despite one of them being a conservative Catholic right wing and the other being a liberal LGBTQ plus leftist supporter thing, I'm running out of adjectives for those sides. Despite that both of them were on totally opposite sides of the political agenda, they were at the same time trying to push their agendas. Tolkien was trying to create books written for Catholicism, and Neil Druckmann was trying to make a narrative aimed toward people that supported LGBT and all that. And I generally don't like it when people try to push agendas. It feels as though it's sacrificing quality over whatever it is your viewpoint is. And at the end of the day, there are going to be people that no matter how well you present your argument, you're not going to convince them that your viewpoint is right. I am 100% certain that even if every single person that ever views my channel in this lifetime, there's going to be at least one person who's going to say, yeah, Paul, you're just a raving lunatic. I don't give a hoot about what you're saying. I'm not going to listen. So why even bother? You have Twitter. Just promote your views there and leave it out of games and books and just write quality fiction. Now, what does this have to do with infuriating ISTJs? You might be wondering. What it has to do is ISTJs don't like it when people shove their own set of morals down other people's throats. It infuriates them when you've got people like businessmen, where they say, it's a business at the end of the day, and I'm going to pay you minimum wage, even though you clearly deserve more, but I'm a money-hungry hog. Their agenda is to get more money. That's not exactly logical and practical. It's disregarding the views of the other workers, and overall that's a lack of morality. You may think, wait a minute, Paul, you ISTJs are thinking types, so that means you don't really get emotional, right? Wrong. Introverted feeling is first and foremost based on the person's internal value system. So while it's true that ISTJs do have very strong values and morals, such as myself, being a very strong practicing Roman Catholic, that doesn't necessarily mean that, like the INFPs and ISFPs, that's going to be their guiding principle. Because ISTJs lead with introverted sensing, they're going to want to ask themselves, okay, does it make sense why I have these morals, as opposed to simply having them and then defending them later. But there are people that not only try to insist that their way is the only way, and even if something is similar, it's still not good because it's not exactly the same. They try to force that into just about everything, and the quality diminishes. So for example, I don't know, say the whole country shuts down because it's Christmas. I mean, to a certain extent, that's fine because, we Catholics believe that Sunday is the day of rest. But on the other hand, what if a person's in a tragic emergency and their car is broken down and the person's like, I am sorry, but it is Christmas, so you will just have to have your children starving until after Christmas. There's got to be a line drawn somewhere, people. Jesus was well aware of people's physical needs as well as their spiritual. That's why he multiplied the bread, because he himself was saying the crowds are following me with nothing to eat. We got to do something to these people. So he gave them the bread because they were literally hungry. They needed their bodies to have sustenance. So if you're going to claim that a worldview or a religion is taking the place of people's actual needs, that's when the ISTJ is going to get really, really, really angry. And that is where I can somewhat sympathize with the people that claim I'm an ISFJ, because ISFJs think exactly the same. The difference between them and me is that they don't have a filter determining if the person is being honest or not. Whereas the ISTJ is going to say, this person says that they're starving, but more than likely they're just going to use that money to ruin their lives further, so I'm actually doing them a favor. The ISFJs are going to say, oh, that person is upset, here, let me help them. So kind of more of a act, don't think mentality. So lack of morality often comes from introverted feeling being lower than the tertiary spot. So if introverted feeling is inferior or in the bottom four, then the ISTJ is going to find that infuriating because they themselves have very, very strong morals and guidelines. And even if they're not religious per se, I've met plenty of atheist ISTJs, they're still at the very least going to expect people to adhere to a moral code that, generally speaking, takes into account what everyone needs. So if you're the type of person that has no morality whatsoever and you're a psychopath killer that just kills everyone, or if you have too many morals and you try to insert that morality where it doesn't belong, like if you're the type that takes a Harry Potter book and burns it because, oh dear, I can't support Harry Potter because it's full of witchcraft. Well, first of all, no. As an avid reader of Harry Potter, I can attest that those claims are somewhat bogus. And second, what if you cause damage to something else in the environment? Now, I'm sure there are people that have thought out the burnings of Harry Potter books, but at the very least, read the books before you come to the conclusion. Because I could easily say Twilight is terrible when I haven't even read a single page of it, with the exception of Amanda the Jedi's excerpts. And I don't know, Twilight could be a good book with bits and pieces of it in here and there, but if I say, oh, it has sex, it has vampires, it has a guy hitting on an unborn baby, it must be terrible, without taking into context everything else, ooh, I'd be a pretty terrible person if I believed that. And that's another thing that infuriates ISTJs, is people that don't take into account contexts behind things and simply act based on their gut emotions, rather than saying, oh, I see. So the reason you didn't respond back wasn't because you're a forgetful airhead, but it's because these extenuating circumstances in your life happened. I see. It all makes sense now. As opposed to, you idiot! Why did you not call me back? You're so stupid, blah, blah, blah. When maybe the person didn't pay their phone bill. Maybe the person was going to pay their phone bill, but then an accident happened. Maybe they just died. So, if the ISTJ doesn't have all the pieces of the picture, they're probably not going to want to come to a conclusion. But there are people who do that, where they do jump to conclusions. And that's what causes ISTJs to be infuriated, especially when the conclusions are directed at the ISTJ. So, for example, if you say, you ISTJs are so emotionless, how can you be so cold and heartless? It's like, have you taken into consideration all of the facts? Do you know me personally? Have you looked into my personal life? No, you haven't. So stop making assumptions. The ISTJ is going to get really upset and really uncomfortable because you did not take the time to be a detective. Imagine if real-life detectives were like that. Instead of having a thorough investigation and a forensics team coming and dusting off fingerprints and saying, oh, well, it looks like the accused's fingerprints is not on the weapon, leading to a greater chance of them being innocent, and they just said, you have a bad face, so I'm not going to bother arresting you. I'm just going to throw you in jail. That would be a terrible detective. And ISTJs make for the best detectives. So if you're not going to be a detective, then shut up. Don't ruin society by your emotions getting in the way. Now, that may sound a little bit rude, but it is true that jumping the gun has led to a lot of false sentences and hurt feelings. And despite the fact that ISTJs don't like hurting other people's feelings, at the same time, they at least try not to hurt people's feelings, but if they do, they're often really ashamed of it. Whereas there are some people that legitimately don't try, and if you tell them as much, they'll say, whatever, not that I give a poot about what you feel. That's where the ISTJs really draw the line, because they're tertiary feelers, and they say, now wait a minute. God may have given us intellect, but they also gave us emotions. So I was actually in the car today to give you an example of where amorality just got me really furious. And my brother was complaining about how his boss was paying him little money despite his amazing skill repertoire. And then he was taking a 3-week-long vacation when he only gave my brother a week-long vacation the whole year. I was like, this guy must be in... I was assuming, so I wasn't making a definitive assumption, but I was like, those ESTJs and ENTJs and their lack of morals. Oh my goodness, how I wish I could just take a feather and tickle him and say, lighten up. Why can't you take into account other people's feelings? And it just made me feel so bad that he would not take into account the fact that my brother has a wife, and with the wife comes kids, and he needs to take care of the family. Like, he can't just work all the time. Obviously, if you've studied the human body, you know that the person needs food, rest, water, shelter. I mean, it's common sense. So the fact that this person was so apathetic to my brother's needs made me unhappy, because 1, I'm loyal to my brother. 2, I know the basic human needs for necessity. And 3, I know I may be insensitive to people's emotions, but at least I try to make up for it if I am. This guy, he just says, oh well, that's a problem of mine, moves on to the next day. I want to keep this brief because my tangent went on for 12. I think I spent 10 of my 20 minutes in the video complaining about Lord of the Rings. So I'll jump on to one other thing that infuriates ISTJs, and you can just say, Paul, let's continue the discussion in the comment section if you want more. Lack of clear communication. Now, we've had to come to the grips that most of the intuitive types, especially the inferior ones, are not the best when it comes to punctuality. They're really good at coming up with a detailed agenda of what's to come, but then there's the meme I just found where the intuitive says, we must change the world, and the censor says, how about you do the dishes first? Which is hilarious that they can't both see in the future and right in front of them at the same time. I sometimes wonder if intuitives even have vision. Like, why did God give them eyeballs if they can't see what's right in front of them? So I think about how many of my intuitive friends are so anti-punctual where I'll say, let's hang out at 7, they arrive at 7:30. Or I ask them to call me back, they take a year to respond. My ENTP friend promised he'd try to fix my computer. It's been 3 years since I made that phone call. That is going to enrage the ISTJ, and it's going to lower their trust. However, that's not to say that just because you're not punctual doesn't mean the ISTJ is going to automatically be angry at you, because again, that's being a bad detective. However, they are going to be upset if you obscure the scene of the crime. You know how it's not a federal offense. You know how it's against the law to tamper with the crime scene? In the same way, the ISTJ is going to treat a lack of punctuality as though they're a detective. They're going to get out their notebook and their magnifying glass and say, okay, testify to the court, if you will, why it is that you didn't call me back. To say, oh, sorry, I'm just forgetful. That's not going to pass. I need evidence. Where is your hard facts? But instead, if you respond with, well, my phone dropped into a puddle of mud, so I wasn't able. I see. You wouldn't have had access to a phone, and there was no one with you at the time. So therefore, I can conclude that it was impossible for you to have made the call. I see, it all fits together. Most intuitive types don't do that. I do appreciate how when intuitive types do respond, they give nice, thoughtful messages that sometimes are so long that they extend beyond the Twitter character cap. I love it when that happens. Please do more of it, intuitive types. But a lot of times they don't justify the reasoning for why they take so long, and instead just expect the ISTJ to be like, oh, you're Catholic, Paul, you'll forgive us anyway. It's like, it's one thing to forgive, but it's another to completely lose our respect. And I really appreciate it when the intuitives can say, this is what happened. This is why I wasn't able to respond. I am sorry, and I will take steps to improve myself in this area. Then the ISTJ can say, well, obviously no one is perfect, but at the very least they're taking steps to account for their weakness, as opposed to just saying they have a weakness and succumbing to it. Just like how a person who's blind doesn't just sit in the house and ignore everyone, they get a cane and they learn how to feel their way around, to the point where my mom's best friend is blind. She and her also blind ex-husband climbed a waterfall together. They didn't just say, we're blind, we can never climb a waterfall. They learned from their problems. In the same way, ISTJs don't want you to succumb to your weaknesses, but to improve on them, just as ISTJs themselves realize, maybe I should be better at reading people's emotions, as opposed to just saying, I have a hard time reading people's emotions, it's just who I am. So, I guess if you want to summarize it really quickly, the best way to not infuriate an ISTJ is to treat them as though everything is a court case and provide evidence. Just like how perjury is against the law, don't commit perjury and present your case thoroughly. And you might be the type that says, well, Paul, sometimes I can't get my thoughts out on the spot. Then tell that to the ISTJ. Tell them, it's hard for me to gather my thoughts on the spot, but if you give me this approximate amount of time, not including other disasters, I will be able to explain myself. And a lot of INFJs have done that, and I applaud them for it. But a lot of them don't think to do that, and that's probably why I have so much friction with them. So, let me summarize once more, just in case you have the attention span of a goldfish and it went over your head. 1. Treat every situation like it's a courtroom case. If you're the type that commits perjury or is not testifying accurately, then, well, the judge is going to say, what a waste of a witness this is. In the same way, that's going to infuriate the ISTJ. And second, show a sense of morals. And third, don't try to shove politics or religion or an agenda into something where it doesn't belong. If, for example, you're just going on a walk and you say, oh, I can't go to the park because someone once upon a time strangled someone with the chains of a swing, so therefore no one can go to the park because that's a scene of evil. It's like, it's just a park. It's not like we're going to a strip club. Now, there's a time and a place for morals. I'm the Catholic gaming nerd. Obviously, I know that. But at the very least, if you're going to write a compelling book, a compelling story, a compelling argument, at least get your facts right. That's why one of my favorite ways of discussing the faith is called Socratic reasoning, where you ask people questions as opposed to simply pointing the finger all the time. So it leads to an exchange between two persons, as opposed to just two people yelling, saying, you're wrong, no, you're wrong, no, you're wrong. That just gives me a headache thinking about it. So I'm not going to repeat my pointers more times. You guys are capable of clicking the scroll bar and rewinding the video if you need to rehear them. I hope this didn't go on too long. Again, this is a retake of a 20-minute long ranting, raving tangent against how much I didn't like Tolkien's books, despite the fact that he's also Catholic like me, but because he incorporated elements of his Catholicism into the books, that itself made the books more boring, instead of just focusing on creating a compelling literature that kept me engaged until the end. So with that, thank you very much for watching. If I left out anything, if I had a bad script, if there's something you didn't like, let me know in the comments section. Let me know if you wonder, Paul, are you always like this? Or is this just how you express your thoughts? I want to hear it. So until the next time, keep the faith, stay epic, God bless, and man, if you really want to tell a good Christian story, Harry Potter is a great example. Bye.